It's unfortunate, but everything worked out well. Yep.
Want me to check, see if they're ready? Go, Chris.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. I'd like to call the Tuesday, September 21st, 2021 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Customers wishing to address the commission or items that are not on the agenda, please fill out the request to speak form located in the back. And give it to the administrative assistant in attendance at the meeting prior to speaking. Customers wishing to address the commission regarding a specific agenda item other than the rate hearings will be given an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Each customer will be given 3 minutes to address the commission. We are here to listen. Any follow-up or feedback will be done by email or on anything that cannot be resolved this evening. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougall to move the agenda, to approve the agenda. Any discussion? I don't think we do. So Paulson? McDougall?
Aye.
Thompson, aye. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion by McDougall, seconded by Paulson to approve the consent agenda. McDougall?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Thompson, aye. Are there any customers to be heard? Any recognitions?
None at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Old business.
One thing to bring up, I sent out some information to the work group for the donation program and working to schedule a meeting with that group before we figure out our next steps.
Great. Item number 8, reports, City Council. Mr. Henriksen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple things. It's tax season, so we're going to have our tax levy approval on Monday, or I think it's Truth and Taxation meeting on Monday. And we're spraying for weeds. Finally passed that, so I know the weeds are kind of getting out of control in the Moorhead Park, so we decided to spray in the fall, and hopefully that takes care of it in the early spring, and then we can continue with a more greener effort. But they're gonna work on that during the winter, but it's a good thing. So that's all I have.
Service Commission, anything?
Madam Chair?
Paulson.
I just wanted to let the board know I had an opportunity to attend the Missouri River Energy Services Leadership Summit last week, and it was absolutely fabulous. I advise any commissioners to attend next year. It really gave me an in-depth knowledge of the services provided by Missouri River Energy and also their overall structure. There was a session on rate setting and also a lot of background on the history of Missouri River Energy and kind of where our allocated energy comes from. And so it was a very educational experience, got a lot of value out of it. So I just wanted to let this commission know how well Missouri River did with the session. So.
Reporting on that. Appreciate it. Anything else from the commission? General Manager's report, Mr. Schmidt.
Sure, a couple items here. Next week is Source Water Week, and so we want to talk about I'll have Mark probably talk a little bit about that as well. And then just again, a kudos to Mark Pritchard for all his work and efforts on the Wellhead Protection Overlay District denial that we had approved last week by the Clay County Commission. Mark was very engaged, very involved in that process, and did a lot of the legwork. So again, kudos to Mark for that. Again, appreciate the assistance from the commission and the city council as well too on that, because without that, I think we would have had a little bit more of a struggle. So Mark, if you want to talk a little bit about that, along with that, I'm going to have him talk about the mandatory water restrictions update.
Sure. Thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. Starting off with the petition to rezone, as Travis had mentioned, we ended up having a very engaged discussion at the Clay County Board of Commissioners meeting on September the 14th, early last week, and we did have a vote in our favor, as it were. The petition was denied on a 3-2 vote, so we were happy with the results. There was a lot of good discussion on both sides, but at the end of the day, we were very happy with the decision that was made to not rezone and to not remove the wellhead protection overlay on that parcel. So again, to echo Travis's comment here a moment ago, I would like to extend a very heartfelt thank you to all the commissioners for being able to help facilitate the joint letter that we worked on with city council members. We had everyone sign it, so again, thank you very much, commissioners, city council members, legal reviewers who helped us out with some of the details. It was a very, very large effort and not a whole lot of time, so there was a lot of input that went into it, and thank you very much. Tying that into Source Water Protection Week, this year, the American Water Works Association started up its first ever Source Water Protection Week. And what that does is it raises awareness about the importance of caring for our water resources. And it really couldn't have happened at a better time, considering the drought that we've experienced since early this year, and then the petition to rezone part of the Buffalo Aquifer that we draw water very next to, if not exactly underneath it. So it was a very timely week, and we will be having some social media posts to spread the word about things that people can do on an everyday basis to help monitor, help protect the source, and make sure that it's there for years to come. So with that, I'll transfer into our most recent updates for our mandatory watering restrictions. For a little bit of historical context, on August the 18th, MPS Water Division received a letter from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources stating that the Red River watershed is now in the drought restrictive phase, which is a ratchet up from what we had talked about last time. It was the DNR's letter formally stating that we needed to further cut our non-essential water use, such as lawn irrigation, car washing in personal driveways, pressure washing of houses, and things like that, that are considered non-essential water use during the summertime. In that letter, the DNR stated that they are hoping that all public water suppliers, such as MPS, would be able to reach January plus 25% levels. So for us, that's about 4.6 to 4.8 million gallons per day, based off of our January 2020 and January 2021 pumping levels. I'm happy to report that we were able to do just that. Compared to our July stage 1 restrictions that we had after the first letter came from the DNR, we were able to realize savings of about 22% of our total flow. So it did exactly what we needed it to. Again, I'd like to send out a thank you to all of the customers and residents of Moorhead and Dilworth that helped us achieve that goal, and we've been doing that ever since about the 23rd or 24th of August. So we've been doing an excellent job as far as our restrictions go. We have had continued conversations with the Minnesota DNR to determine whether or not we need to continue to have these restrictions. The city of Fargo, you may have seen last night, did vote to rescind their most recent stage of watering restrictions. They're going back to an even odd watering restriction, or every other day. We're not quite able to do that as efficiently. We do need to wait until a letter comes from the Minnesota DNR stating that we can do that. So the rules are a little bit different from state to state, and MPS is currently awaiting a letter from the DNR to state that we can go back to our stage 1 restrictions, which would be every other day based on what we had earlier this summer. So right now, the Red River levels have recovered slightly. At the time that this report was made, and the stats that I have before you on paper, the Red River had recovered to about 198 CFS. Since last week when this report was made, it has declined back down to about 133 to 135. So we're still not out of the woods, but we are slowly recovering based off of the timely rains that we've been receiving. However, right now we don't have enough to say that we're out of these dry conditions yet. So we still have our mandatory restrictions of 1 day per week in place, and that will be until we receive our updated letter from the DNR stating we can go back.
Mark, any questions? Comments? Go ahead, Mr. Kendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to go back to that Clay County Court hearing, Mark, I thought you did a great job. I wanted to mention that, and Travis is there too, did a great job, and it was well received, and it was a good conversation. But just very well done, both of you. So thank you.
Yeah, we've got some work ahead of us for that as well too. I think there's some education and reinforming, the priorities of that aquifer and making sure that everybody understands that it's a valuable resource, and if it's not there, we don't have the abilities to use it in the future. So we're going to be working with Clay County and with Dilworth to help remind and educate of what that resource is there for. So we'll be working on that as we move forward. Other than that, I'm going to have Mark Moreland come up, and he's going to talk about our update on the collections due to the COVID impact. I'll let Mark kind of speak to the details there and what him and his staff are doing.
All right, good afternoon. Mark Moylan, Controller, Moorhead Public Service. Monthly update on collections and impact of COVID. We've now been into our resumption of normal disconnection processes and collection processes for about 3 or 4 months now. It started in early May. And since then, we're back to about where we were pre-COVID. At the end of August, the number of past due accounts during the month were about 14.8%, which is right around within 1% of where we were February of 2020, back in July of 2019, so pre-COVID. So we're about back where we were. The payment plan conversion program still continues to operate as expected. The results are actually, I think, a little bit better than anticipated. We started out with about 554, we started out with exactly 554 accounts, totaling $955,000. As of the end of August, we were down to 374 accounts still remaining, with total balances of 537. A number of accounts were flat out paid off, the amounts that were outstanding. They were able to find some funding through the Rent Help Minnesota program, through West Central Communities Action, and to get the past due balances caught up. A number of other accounts, though, just moved out of the system, moved out of the Moorhead Public Service area. And so as a result, we have seen about a 25% increase over the last 2 months over normal write-offs. But it's not very alarming, or as alarming as it could be. 25% is pretty good when we started with a relatively low write-off percentage. We are well below industry averages for overall write-offs. So that has been going very well. As to assistance programs, we're in flux now. We're between seasons. The West Central Minnesota LIHEAP, or Low Income Energy Assistance Program. The calendar year 2021 is ended. They are no longer accepting applications or sending out disbursements of funds. They are accepting applications now for the 2021-2022 season, and they expect to start approving those applications in mid-October, with anticipation that funding will go out in early November. So we do have about a 40-day window here where there is no assistance agency money available, and so we'll have to work closely with those that are affected, that have past due balances, to see if we can allow them to defer 1 more month until they get an opportunity to get their applications in and approved. But overall, we're still back to about 1% of all of our counts, which is about 200 per month, are disconnected due to non-payment, and then we work with them to either get caught up on the electric portion of their bill or to reach a satisfactory payment plan agreement. The Rent Help Minnesota program still continues to function. It was started in April. We still are working through some hiccups. The program, I think, has some issues where funding isn't getting out as quickly as hopefully they anticipated. And so we're still finding some accounts are trickling in. They may have submitted their applications back in April, and we're now 4 or 5 months past that, and they still haven't received approval and/or funding to get it transferred back to Moorhead Public Service. But we are now able to at least get some updates from the customers to get status as to where their application is within the system. Is it approved? Is it approved and pending payment, or is it just submitted? And of course, we want them to be approved and pending payment because that means we'll be getting our funds a little quicker. So with that, continue to, as customers, continue to get your applications into West Central Community Action. Again, it is a new program year, so what you submitted last year needs to be re-updated and sent in this year. In theory, they do send out letters to customers that were approved for the program the previous year, but if you have moved or if they're no longer at the same address, just double check and get applications in to get the funding available in November when it's available. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Questions? I guess I have one. On balance, is this where we are right now better than you had hoped, or pretty much what you expected, or have we missed the boat?
Overall, it is actually better than I anticipated with the payment plan agreements. When we started with 554, I thought within the first 3 or 4 months we'd have lost half, and that would be more due to non-payment or funding issues. But to still have 374 still going, and they're making their payments as they agreed to when they signed the agreements, I think that's very positive.
Questions? Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you.
One last thing. Today is IT Professionals Day, so I want to send a shout out to our 2 IT staff members and all the work they do to keep us cyber secure. So, and then anybody else that's an IT professional. So thank you for that.
That's it then for you, Mr.
I am done. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Item D, Missouri River Energy Services.
Sure. I'm going to have our visitor in who's here today come up. Tom Heller, he's the CEO of Missouri River Energy Services. And Tom is going to give us an update on Missouri River and what they do for Moorhead and Moorhead Public Service, and talk a little bit about where they're at today.
Thank you, Travis. Sheriff Thompson, members of the Moorhead Public Service Commission and City Council and Moorhead Public Service Commission staff, it's nice to be here today. I talked to you, I think, virtually last July, a year ago July, and I know we've all been suffering through this pandemic, and now it's nice to get somewhat back to normal. Hopefully we'll be back fully to normal pretty soon, but I do appreciate the chance to see you and talk to you personally. Commissioner Paulson, I know you were with us last week, and hopefully what I say, some of the things are going to be repetitious, but maybe there'll be a few new things I talk about as well. I know Marcy Douglas from our staff was here and talked to you in August. Marcy did some strategic planning with you. That's one of the services we do for our members, and from talking to Travis, it sounded like it was a very good exercise. So thank you for allowing her to participate with you in your strategic planning process. What I want to do is, and I don't want to take a lot of your time today, but I want to take a little time to talk a little bit about background of who we are, what we do, our power supply, our agreements with you, talk a little bit about a rate comparison on how you sit competitively with others in the region, and our current and future power supply. I want to spend some time on that, on what we're looking at doing for the future to make sure that we have got clean energy resources for you, and then finish up with some services that we're providing. Work? Yes, it does. Well, Missouri River Energy Services, we were formed about 55 years ago, where municipal electric systems got together and decided we need to work together to develop power supply. You know, XL Energy, Otter Tail, bigger power companies, and the co-ops, you know, they're larger, they can do things a little more cost effectively. What these cities did originally in Iowa was come together and say we need to form an organization so that we can get some economies of scale. And currently we have 61 members in these 4 states. There's more in Minnesota than others. We have, let me get the next slide. Like I said, the first multi-state joint action agency formed in 1965. We're the first one in the country to do multi-states. Most of them were formed in just one state alone. 61 members, all our original members had WAPA hydropower. That's why we were formed. We were formed because all of our cities, including Moorhead, used to get all of your power from the federal government. Back then it was the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation that turned it into Western Area Power Administration. In about 1975, they said, hey, that's it. You got all your requirements from us. You're going to have to go someplace else to get the rest of it. So we came into business to provide supplemental power supply over and above your federal hydropower allocation. That's why we're in business, to provide you power over and above that. You have your WAP allocation. The difference between us and what the rural electric co-ops and some of the other joint action agencies did is they made, mandated that you turn that allocation over to your power supplier. We didn't do that. That's your power supply, WAPA. So that's yours. We do some administrative work for you, but it's yours. Our annual budget right now is about $300 million. We got 13 members on the board of directors I'll talk about in a minute. We meet monthly down in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, staff of 103 people, 60 in Sioux Falls. We've got some distribution maintenance people, some linemen work for us in our member communities under contract, and we've got some energy services people as well and power plant employees. In addition to Missouri River Energy Services, because we were formed so long ago, there was no joint action agency legislation in any of the states. So Missouri River is really nothing more than a joint powers agreement between cities in 4 states. And we went first to look at getting financing. We were told by bond counsel that we're going to need federal legislation because you're an interstate compact. So we weren't able to do financing. So what we did is we went to all of our states and tried to get some legislation passed to allow cities to jointly finance. Minnesota did it first. And so we formed Western Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, and all of the members, Minnesota members that are members of Missouri River are members of Western Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, and they're basically our financing tool. And Travis sits on the board of Western Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, formed in 1976 with 24 members. We finance and own all the generation, transmission, even our office building is owned by Western Minnesota. Currently, we've got about $661 million in outstanding debt. Most recent project was $400 million for the Red Rock project, a hydro project that we built in Iowa. We'll talk about in a minute. We've got a AA3 Moody's bond rating and AA- from Fitch. Very few joint action agencies like ours have that high of a bond rating. And that's a tribute, not only to the good job I think our board of directors does in making sure we have adequate financial resources, but it's also the rating agencies look through us to you. And that's also a tribute to you and the good financial work that you do and all of our other members. There's 7 members on the board, 4 largest members, which includes Moorhead, 3 other members elected annually. Monthly board meetings the same time MRS meets, and we have an administrative services agreement, so they don't have their own staff, the staff of Missouri River. So you've got the financing company, Western Minnesota, and the operating company, Missouri River Energy Services. And again, as I mentioned, we were formed because of economies of scale to share resources and do things jointly so that we could reduce risk and have lower costs. There's 3 agreements that we have with you that I call the main agreements. Number 1 is the membership agreement. And it kind of spells out the terms. It allows you to vote in an annual meeting to elect one of our 13 board members of the 61 members. It's just a general membership agreement. The main one, though, is our S1 power supply agreement. S stands for supplemental because it's over and above the hydropower that I talked about. And that's a long-term agreement. It's a long-term agreement. It goes through 2057, and the reason it's so long is that we have to finance these power supply facilities. So you've got a hydropower station that we just built in Iowa. We got 30-year bonds that we have to pay off, and we need the contracts to be long so that we have enough time for the security behind those bonds to pay the bonds off. So the agreement is with you and us is also the security that pays off the bonds to Western Minnesota. So it's a 3-party agreement, Western Minnesota, Missouri River, and you. So that's the security to pay off the bonds. One of the things that we've recently done is and this Moorhead was a driving force in this, and we allow you to produce renewable energy yourself. And that's why you were able to set up your wind turbines and your solar panels locally, because we want you to be able to do that so people don't put solar panels on their roof. We've had a couple of members take us up on that. Detroit Lakes, you and Barnesville right now have done that. Every July, we get together with our board of directors and we take a look at, what are the big issues that we need to look at to make sure that we're successful and you're successful in the future. Well, we've got three things that we're looking at. Basically, we've got attracting and retaining employees. We've had a lot of retirements, and you're looking at another one that's probably not that too far away from that fact. We've got several others, and you have had many as well. Maintaining financial stability, creating a clean energy future, keeping up with new technology, and preserving our membership and sales. And just to touch on one or two of those, attracting and retaining employees, we go through the process that like you did. We get our employees involved, we engage them, and we're doing that on a constant basis. We've got succession planning, we do leadership training for our employees. But the thing that we decided to do this year is we're looking at providing our members some templates, just like we did during COVID-19. We put together a plan on what we would do with employees, when they would leave the office, when they would come back. And there's a lot of plans like that we're going to put together as templates and provide those to members. That's an example. What are some other things that we can do? We're looking at working with our members so that they can also try to get more college students involved in summer intern programs. Something we do a lot at MRAS. We've got probably a half dozen summer interns we try to work with. We're going to work with our members to see if we can get more interns placed in your communities. We think that's a great way for attracting and looking at getting new employees. In fact, you're looking at one of those right now. I know Travis mentioned my background is I worked here for a while. I worked here because I was a college student at NDSU. And I came here because there was an opening on a part-time basis. And I worked here quite a few years full-time after that. I've got that, it's something that I have close to my heart, and we're going to look at working with our members so that we can get more college students out to help you and be a source of future employees. I'll talk a little bit more about maintaining financial stability and clean energy future here in just a few minutes. Our power supply bill, as I indicated, you have your WAPA hydropower allocation. In that bill is the WAPA hydropower that you get from us monthly, bill from us, which is the power over and above your WAPA allocation, and your transmission bill, SPP transmission. We schedule and arrange all of your WAPA power through what's called an administrative services agreement. That's the third agreement that we have with you. Sign an agreement to allow us to take care or administer your WAPA contract for you. Still your contract, but we administer it for you. All of our members pay the same S1 rate, and back in 19, we did have a 3% discount, and I'm happy to say just a week and a half ago, the board did approve a 5% rate decrease for next year, 2022. We're feeling quite good about the fact that we're able to do that. We've financially done quite well over the last few years, and I'll get into that in a minute here. We do project stable rates through 2026, and we may even be able to go further than that with our financial projections. We're looking at having some good results, but we always know that there's some things that can happen out there. We're looking at moving to time of use rates in 2023. We'll have a little lower demand rate. That'll impact you from our analysis very little, and I know that's something Travis is looking at right now, whether you go to a full energy time of use rate with your customers or not. Our members don't have to. We're going to have a wholesale rate that charges you on a time of use basis. It's really up to you for you to make the decision whether you want your retail customers to also have that time of use rate. You don't have to do it. I'm kind of mumbling through here a lot of stuff real quickly. If there's any questions when I'm going through here, please ask. On the time of use rates themselves in 2023, I mentioned we're going to be going to those. That should be pretty much revenue neutral to MRAS, estimated impact about 0.2%. Right now, we are beginning the shadow billing, and I know, Travis, have you seen the shadow billing of what it would look like if you had time of use rates in place compared to the rate we have now? Good. We're going to be going through that for a while before we get, for a year before we decide to move forward on that. And like I indicated, that is optional for you. You don't have to do it. This is something I want to spend a few minutes on. I think this is something so important, and I know you probably have looked at this locally. One of the things we do is we do provide rate studies for Moorhead Public Service and our other members. We've got some people on the staff that do that, and I know Travis has indicated you're looking at having us come back maybe next year for water rates and the year after for electric rates, and we're happy to do that. One of the things that we do is we try to keep track of what other retail providers charge in regions around our member communities. And you can see here, this is residential electric bill, an average of about 1,000 kilowatt hours a month, which is pretty close to one who doesn't use electric heating. And you can see the average there. My eyesight, I'm gonna have to look at you can see where Moorhead is, 107.15. You're quite a bit to the left. You are under the average, and the average is, I can see,
116.
yeah, 115. So you're a little bit below the average. You've only got a couple communities that are lower than this, and they're our members. Those cities are also members of Missouri River Energy. You've got Brookings, Watertown, and Alexandria, three other communities that are our larger members. They're a little bit less than you are, but not a lot less. You're within, quite a striking distance. And I know one of the reasons yours probably a little higher is your transfer's higher. And that's okay. That's a local decision you make, but I know those communities don't have that large of a transfer, so that's probably one of the reasons that they're a little bit lower than you are. And the same with a commercial customer. This is somebody using around 380,000 kilowatt hours, 825 kW, 61% load factor. You can again see there's a couple communities that are lower than you, but not very much. I mean, there's only one, and that's Watertown. That's even substantially lower than the other ones are around 1 or 6% or 1%. So your rates are very, very competitive, especially when you look at not our members. Pushed the wrong button there. When you look at what others are doing, Red River Co-op, $157 compared to 107 that you have. I mean, you're substantially lower than the rural electric co-op around here. That's great. That's great news and should be shared with your retail customers. Financially, Travis indicated, I think in his write-up, that I talk a little bit about our annual report, and I've got one here. I can leave it. It's online. You can get that if you'd like as well. But financially, we think we've done quite well over the last few years. In fact, we did so well last year that we provided a 10% rebate to all of our members. We gave you 10% of your previous year's purchases, sent as a check back to you in about December. I think you got that. That was $1.25 million we sent back to you. We also had a FERC settlement that we've been working on for years in the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission with some companies that were overcharging us on transmission. We got a settlement with them, a fairly large settlement. We worked on that for 6 years, and we were able to send back to you an additional $1.72 million around the 1st of May. So that's about 24% or about 25% of your bill this last year was sent back in the form of cash repayments. We looked at doing that more, but we'd rather reduce rates so that you can budget. And that's why we're reducing our rates 5% next year rather than looking at a refund. Jumping into power supply. It's one thing I haven't mentioned here. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. One thing I didn't mention here on this refunds is, how well we performed under the polar vortex. And a lot of that is due to what our members like Moorhead did when they were asked to generate electricity. Travis started up your generators. I know you did have some small outages for a little while that Western Area Power asked you to do because you're an SPP, but all of our members performed exceptionally. We're able to keep all of our generation online. Our power supply project in Laramie River Station was able to run as well as all of our other resources, and we made well over $40 million. We cleared on just that 1 week. We're looking at that money as being set aside right now so that we can pay. We've got some bonds that are coming due the end of next year. And they've got a call date. We can't advance refund those anymore. As you know, with revenue bonds, we're a tax-exempt municipal entity just like you are. But we're looking at paying cash to refund those bonds with that money. Power supply. I like to get into that for a few minutes if I can on where does your power supply come from right now? Well, these are the resources that are available. You can see those along the river there, the Missouri River. That's Western Area Power Administration. That's close to half of your power supply. Other resources we have is the one down in Wyoming. That's the only coal plant that we have an interest in. That's Laramie River Station. We are joint owners of that with Basin Electric in North Dakota, Tri-State G&T in Colorado, and Lincoln Electric Municipal Utility in Lincoln, Nebraska. We own about 17% of that whole plant. It's 1,720 megawatts, I believe. There is 3 generating units there. 2 of them go to the western side interconnection. 1 of them goes east. We're able to get half the power out of the generator that goes east. So we're about 1/6 of the total. That has been a very good plant for it. Has run for years. But because of prices, we've got the capacity that we're using from it, but we're not really burning a lot of coal lately, and I'll get into that in a minute. Other resources, we've got a nuclear power contract for the output of a nuclear plant at Point Beach in Wisconsin. We've got several wind turbines you can see around here, one up in Rugby, North Dakota, and some down at the Buffalo Ridge. We've got the new hydro plant, which is kind of in black way down on the bottom there, our new hydroelectric facility that just went online. And that's a picture of it. This project, what's new, this wasn't all built by us. The dam was there. The big box that you see, that's the powerhouse. That we built. And what we did is we built that. We punched 2 holes in the dam, and then the other side of those holes that we punched in the dam is an intake structure. The construction took 6 years, and it probably should have only taken 4.5, 4, but because of the massive flooding we had a few years ago, with the coffer dam that was built upstream, it was delayed. We feel fairly good, though, that we were able to get done with this project. It's the water levels are now low, so we're not able to generate that much. We will in the summertime and the spring when the water levels come back up. We're able to get this project built about 4% over budget, which we feel pretty good about with the 2-year delay in construction. But one of the things we're working on right now with our other national associations is to streamline some of this permitting time. It took us 14 years to get this thing built from the time we first started a permitting process with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Corps of Engineers. We had to get 70-some permits from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, from the state DNRs, and nobody opposed it. And that's how long it still took to get it built. But it's a good resource. It'll last 100 years. What is our energy picture right now? Back in 2005, on the left there, you can see we were 50% carbon free. Now, this is all of our members. This is the WAPA allocation as well as the power we supply. So back in 2005, we were about 50-50. 50% Laramie River Station coal and about 50% hydropower. Well, today, because of the growth that we've had and the fact that Laramie River Station is in a market right now, and it's not, back in 2005, it was probably running 85-90% of the time. Now it runs about 25% of the time because of market prices. The market prices are so depressed because of all the wind that's out there, we'll shut it off for a couple weeks at a time, and we won't burn coal because it's cheaper. It's cheaper to buy power in the market. So right now we're only running 14% of our total power supply comes from coal. 40% still comes from that hydro that our members get. 34% market purchases, and we're looking at 84% carbon free. Your picture here is pretty phenomenal. In 2020, you can see what you've done is you were 57% renewable, 88% carbon free. And what I know Travis has recommended to you and what you've done is you've greened up your entire portfolio so that you can say you're 100% net zero carbon power supply for 2021. And I applaud you for that. That's really great that you've done that. That's something that you can really brag about when you compare that to the rural electric co-ops, even XL Energy, who brags about all the renewable energy they've got. They aren't even close to that. This I'm just going to mention briefly. We're in 2 markets. And right now you generate electricity, you bid your price into the market, and there's a clearing price. And they tell you every day whether you clear the market and you run. Well, with a coal plant, you got to do that for like in a week at a time. You can't do it every day. But we bid into these markets, and you are in what's called SPP. That's the one, the Southwest Power Pool. That is the one that had the polar vortex because it gets into Texas. And the Texas this last summer had all this cold weather, gas wells freezing up, and a lot of power plants that went down because of the gas supply. And that's why you're asked to run. We got about half of the power we sell to our members is in SPP and about half is in MISO. Here's a picture of where that line is. And you can see you are directly connected to Western Area Power Administration, so you're in SPP. While most all of the other Minnesota members, other than I think it's Madison and Laverne, are in MISO, Midwest ISO, or the Mid-Continent ISO, I should say. The significance of this is we really have to develop two power supply programs, one for MISO, one for SPP, and balance that because we can't get transmission capacity that's economical between the two. They're pretty much separate power systems. So before I get into future power supply options, I rambled quite a bit. Are there any questions on anything I've talked about so far?
Tom, I got a question concerning that discussion about the bond refunds from the revenue generated during the polar vortex. So is there obviously savings on long-term debt service on those bonds? Does that get worked into the reduction in rates too, or has Missouri River decided how they're going to allocate the savings on that long-term debt service?
What will happen is we will, probably about a year from now, we'll be within 90 days of the call date. And the boards, including Travis with Western Minnesota, will sit down and make a decision. What should we do here? We've got $50 million of bonds that are callable. We've got cash set aside that we can refund them. Should we do that, or should we sell bonds again? My guess is most likely we will probably refund those bonds because we've got $600 million already we're paying debt service on. I think our average debt service is about 3.5%. That's pretty low. So it's already pretty low. But if we do that, you're right. That will provide us more cushion so that we could possibly reduce rates again or make sure that we don't have to increase rates beyond 2026. Good question. Yeah, that's cash that's available then. We don't have the debt service anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Thank you.
Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for being here. I look forward to these presentations every year. So I got a quick question for you, and this is going to jump back a few slides, but why is Watertown why are they well below the market average there?
I can go back there. It'll just take a second. Watertown has got a fairly high, every member has a different WAP allocation. And get back to that one. It all depends on how much you've grown since 1975. The Moorhead has grown some, so you're about 50% hydro and 50% from us. Some of our members, there's some small members like, let's take, I think even Riverdale, North Dakota, for example, they're 90% WAPA yet, and only 10% from, because they haven't grown at all. They're just a small town and they haven't grown. I don't think Watertown is probably, they had a good size WAPA allocation to begin with. I don't think they've grown that, but they are growing quite a bit right now. But they've got a good size WAPA allocation as well. I don't think they transfer anything, and this I know it gets to be controversial. I don't think they transfer anything to the general fund. They do not have what you have here in Moorhead. They've got tax, all of the businesses that they have there, except maybe their tech school, are tax-paying entities. So their transfer is almost nothing. And I think that's probably what would make up most of the difference.
Thank you.
Tom, can I ask what the difference is between the WAPA rate and what's provided by the remaining generation from Missouri River Energy?
Well, the WAPA rate is very low. It's about 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and I think our rate's going to be about 6 next year without transmission. I think that's without transmissions added on top of that too, though, isn't it? About 5.8, if I recall, from the 5.5 maybe. Yeah, 5.5 is what our budget is for next year.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing too, and I think that's something our constituents need to understand. How that WAPA really is an advantageous rate for keeping our rates low long term. So it's pretty impressive.
Absolutely, and when back history-wise, back when Moorhead was here, other cities were here. You had your own generating plant. You weren't buying power from anybody. You're generating your own power. Back in the 1960s, when the federal government came along and said, hey, we got a deal for you, that hydropower was more expensive than what you were generating for. And to shut the power plants down locally was a tough decision. But the people had the foresight to know hydropower is a long-term investment. Because you made that commitment, that investment, you're going to benefit from that for years. That contract goes through 2050 right now, and it'll probably even be extended beyond that. But that low-cost hydropower, that's like with the Red Rock project we've got. Once that debt is paid off, you've got very, very low costs. Thank you. Great questions. I don't have a lot left here, but I do want to talk about what are we doing for future power supply. Okay, as I indicated, we're in 2 markets, so we've got to work in both markets, SPP and MISO. Laramie River Station was built in 1980. That's a coal plant. I know it's probably the most cost-effective coal plant that Basin Electric and Tri-State have in their fleet, so they're probably not going to want to shut that one down very quickly. But with all the economic pressures we have, and with all the environmental pressure that we're going to be having, how long will that plant last? Right now, our contracts for it go through 2042. My guess is that if these plants run beyond 2030, it's going to probably be amazing. We're needing to look at replacing those just because of the environmental issues and the carbon reduction that we're looking at doing. So 2030, 2035, those plants will probably be shut down. So what are we going to do to replace it? Well, for the energy, we're looking at developing wind and solar, and we're going to be doing that on a large-scale basis. We're going to be doing that on a shorter-term basis as well, or a smaller basis as well. In fact, talking to Travis, today, we're looking at working with our members and developing, 3, 4, 5 megawatt solar projects in our member communities. And we'll probably come to our bigger communities first, work with you, and put solar in our member communities. Put it what's called behind the meter. You can kind of get away without having to do transmission studies at MISO and SPP then, which take years and are very expensive. But if we put it behind your wholesale meter and own it, we basically reduce your load. Everybody benefits, including you. So we're going to be looking at doing that on the energy side. Plus, we're going to be looking at doing some larger wind and solar projects as well. I know Travis has mentioned to me the concern about how long do these projects last? Well, we're seeing now, we've got a wind farm that we've purchased at Marshall, and I know you've got the same problem with your wind farms here. They only last so long, and you got to put money into them, and we're doing that. We're upgrading a lot of putting new turbines in, we're putting new gearboxes in. They're costly, but it's still a good investment because if you can keep them running for a few more years, it's better. How long will solar last? I don't know. There's a little bit of degradation every year. Usually you can get a good purchase power agreement for 20 years anyway. We just don't know right now. They'll probably be easier to retrofit than wind turbines are, though. But that's most likely what will happen is when there's more energy efficiency coming out of new solar panels and wind turbines, you'll be replacing them in the future. We're going to be looking at studying battery storage because there's 2 pieces, as maybe Travis has talked to you about in the power industry. You got energy, which is wind and solar, but when wind and solar doesn't shine, you got to have something else. You've also got to have capacity there to pick up that load. And that's sometimes and a lot of times done with natural gas turbines, like we have down at Exira, and we got one in Watertown, South Dakota. Can you build those in the future? We're not sure. It's going to be more and more difficult. We're looking at some battery storage that we'll be putting in conjunction with probably some of the solar project in our member communities. And on a long-term basis, I think working with our research at Electric Power Research Institute, in 10 years, there's a possibility of us not burning natural gas, but maybe even using hydrogen to burn in our gas turbines as well. The last line there is a big project that we're working on. We're looking at a pumped hydro project in Gregory County, South Dakota. It's in south-central South Dakota along the Missouri River. There's a 700-foot bluff right around the Platte area, and we've got a FERC license right now to study this project. We're looking at pumping water out of the Missouri River, pump it up 700 feet, and you make a big lake up there, basically. And you pump it up when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining. And when those two aren't happening, you let the water down and you generate electricity. So it's a pump and a generator together. It's called a pump storage. It's a big battery. And one of the things that we think is going to keep the lights on when the coal plants and the gas plants get shut down, we're going to need sources like this to make sure the lights stay on. This is a huge project. It's 2,000 megawatts. All of our load is only 1,000 megawatts. So we've got a partner right now that we're working with and doing the first evaluation of this on whether we can move forward. The project could probably cost in excess of $5 billion. So it's a lot of money, but it's something that if we get a small piece of this, it could be a good future for Missouri River and all of our members. But a lot of study has to be done yet. I don't think we're going to get any opposition to the project. We're going to have to work with the Native Americans quite closely because that's old. You know, it's reservation land that was taken away from them, and there's a lot of artifacts there. And we're meeting with the tribes right now to make sure that we address their concerns if this project moves forward. But something you'll hear a lot more about in the next few years. So lastly, before I wrap up, I just want to touch on a couple of services that we provide. You know, not only do we sell you electricity, over the years, we've expanded our services. And I know when I first started at Missouri River, the board of directors pretty much told me, we're hiring you to make electricity, sell it to us. You stay on your side of the meter, we'll stay on ours. You don't come into our communities and do any work. Well, over the years, the members have decided, you know, if we do some of these things together, we can do it a lot more cost effectively. So we've expanded some of those services like retail rate studies, like distribution maintenance. We've got 6, 7 communities in Minnesota where the linemen work for us, and we actually, you know, are able to move crews around so they can do work more effectively. We've got AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, that I know Travis is going to be looking at in a few years, where we read the meters for all of our members, send the data back to them so they can do the billing. We've got an agreement for utility billing information so that we can get discounts on customer information systems. And we have membership through our national organizations as well. Bright Energy Solutions, I know that Dennis used to work with our staff at MRAS, and Moorhead has saved 7.8 megawatts since 2009 on the energy efficiency work you've done. That's incredible. That's a lot. I mean, your power plant is 10 megawatts, right? So you've almost, well, you've gotten 3/4 or 80% of the way of saving all the power that the capacity that your power plant has. And with that, we've provided you almost $2.5 million in incentives for the retail customers to do the things to reduce their demand in energy. And the real reason we do that is that we don't have to go out and build a new power plant then. If we can delay building a new power plant, keep your rates down. And your members and your retail customers have more money so that they can expand their businesses. We've got economic development rate discounts, electric vehicle incentives, and as lastly indicated, strategic planning services that you've used as well. I don't know if there's anything else on there that you'd like to ask about. Our core purpose, and you'll see this in our vision statement, our core purpose, our vision and mission is the word member is in there. We exist for you. We exist because you need our services, want our services, and we provide what you need and want. That's why we're here. So our core purpose is to advance your value to your customers through energy and energy services. With that, I'd like to thank you. Hopefully I didn't get too windy, and hopefully it wasn't too much of a repetition, Joel.
No, I don't think so. I think it's great information, and it's actually quite amazing all of the great things that Missouri River Energy Services does to keep our rates down and provide clean and sustainable energy for the residents of Moorhead. There's one thing I think I picked up on last week that you didn't touch on that I think should be discussed just briefly, and that's the maintenance of the hydropower for the WAPA and how you play a role in that. And maybe you could just explain that to the board, because I think that's extremely important in keeping our WAPA allocation and sustainable long-term in keeping those hydropower facilities up to maintenance standards. So.
Well, thank you. I'd be happy to address that. And that is a very important program. And maybe I'll start this with prefacing it by saying, you know, the federal government has got some really goofy ways that they account for things. You know, you pay for your WAPA hydropower allocation. That money goes to WAPA. They have to stick it all in the federal treasury. They have to send it to Washington. They can't take that like you do and say, okay, we're going to pay our bills with this. No. They've got to go back to Congress and get an appropriation for money that you've sent them. So because of that, they keep getting cut. They keep getting cut on their capital programs. The Congress only gives them so much money to fix things. So about 15, maybe 20 years ago now, we worked with the rural electric co-ops that also buy hydropower from Western Area Power Administration to set up a company called Western States Power Corporation. And what we do is we work with the Bureau of, with the Corps of Engineers, who actually runs, you know, the Corps. They run the dams and they run the generators. They own the generators. And WAPA does the marketing and they own the transmission. We work with those two agencies to find out, what do you guys need to keep this stuff running? And we will, through accounting procedures, we forward money to them. I think we've forwarded like $50 million. And they pay us back in 3 months. And it's just a goofy way the government does their financing, but they have capital then that they can use to make sure that these projects keep running. So, great question. Did that kind of answer it?
Yeah, that's great. And it's those types of partnerships that can keep everything running and provide that sustainability that we all need for these massive hydro facilities. So I just thought it was important to kind of show how you guys play that role in keeping those operational as well. So.
Well, thank you. And one additional thing I'll mention with WAPA, and I know Joel is probably, I should say Travis is involved with this as well, is we're working with WAPA right now to come up with a better communication method on what to do during a polar vortex. And because many of our members, they had power just cut off. They weren't even notified by WAPA. They just, you know, they kind of went, what happened? They started making phone calls and found out that, well, we had to cut you off because of the emergency situation that Southwest Power Pool is called. Well, we're working with WAPA to try to help them develop a plan in which they can communicate to Travis and you and us on these things before it happens.
That's great to hear. I know myself, and I'm sure the rest of the commission members got a lot of phone calls during that time period. You know, obviously communication could have been enhanced. And so I'm happy to hear that you guys are working on that.
Any other questions or comments?
Not
Okay.
a final thank you, if I may, Chairman.
Absolutely.
Chairperson. You know, as I indicated to you, I was able to start working here part-time when I was going to college, and you had the confidence, or your predecessors had the confidence in me to give me a full-time job to start me in my career. So for that, I want to thank you, and it was great to be here with you today.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, we need to accept this report. So I'd entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the report on Missouri River Energy Services update and the 2020 annual report? No. Yeah?
It was within the PowerPoint. It was just
Okay.
brief.
Okay, that's fine. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you again. Item number 10, approve amendment to services agreement for Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association Safety Management Program. Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I'm gonna take this one myself because I'll probably explain everything like Taylor said before he even gets to the podium. So just as a reminder, on an annual basis, we utilize Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association to administer our safety management program. So they come into MPS once a month for 2 days, and they do our safety training, and they'll do different things every month. Along with that, they go out and they inspect our jobs and make sure that we're being safe out there and just kind of do an overall look. Along with that, they also provide JT&S training, job training safety, and that is specifically for the linemen, for their professional development piece of it as well too. Just, they'll do pull top rescue and items like that as well too, in addition to the normal safety training. So we'll go through first aid, bloodborne pathogens, confined spaces, all those different types of things as well too. And so on an annual basis, we have to amend this policy. It's a $350 increase, so it's very minor, and I just want to ask for your approval on that.
Questions? No? Okay, I'd entertain a motion then.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by McDougal, seconded by Paulson, to approve the amendment to the service agreement. Any further discussion? Seeing none, McDougal,
Aye.
Paulson,
Aye.
Thompson, aye. Item number 11, approve the task order number 6 with DGR Engineering.
This one as well. Matt wasn't able to be here tonight. So the task order that's in front of you this evening is with DGR Engineering for Moorhead DOE tap substation repairs. This task order is related to the damage that we received because of the storm back in June. We had the lightning strike on the transformer. We had 3 transmission structures that were toppled over. Again, this is to work towards a replacement of that transformer and a couple other items that we'll have to fix at the same time. And this basically starts the process. DGR will be putting a set of specifications together, and we'll go out for bids, and then, of course, order the transformer, and then have to do the construction to install it as well, too. So this is the first step of trying to get back to normal, and I'll just asking for your approval on it. It is incorporated into the 2022 budget plan.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
General Manager Schmidt, in an instance like this, are there insurance policies on our infrastructure that assists in repaying us for getting things back to normal?
Yes, it's actually noted in there, and I left it out. We are working with the League of Minnesota Cities that takes care of our insurance. Matt has actually been on site with members of the insurance company looking at everything. They're still working through the process right now. We don't know where it's going to line up to be. They could pay for a like replacement of what's currently existing, or they could pay for the betterment piece of it as well too. We are budgeting for the betterment portion of it. We just don't have any of the final details yet. That is something that it sounds like they're going to have an engineer come up on site. I think they want to do an internal inspection as well too. So they were happy to have an engineer on site with them when their engineer was there, so that they could discuss it a little bit better instead of a finance person or a water plant guy or something like that. They were very appreciative that we had staff on hand for that.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the task order with DGR Engineering.
Second.
We have a motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougal, to approve the task order with DGR Engineering. Any further discussion? Seeing none, McDougal,
Aye.
Paulson,
Aye.
Thompson, aye. Item number 12, award bids for 2022 electrical materials.
I'm going to have Taylor Holt, distribution engineer, talk about this. It's been an interesting year, as we talked about when we asked for your approval of the specification and advertisement for bids. So we've seen some supply chain issues, so Taylor will bring you up to speed on that. Go ahead, Taylor.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Taylor Holt, Electric Distribution Engineer. This is just our annual order for transformers and wire, which has become necessities for the capital projects that we do yearly. Normally, we don't actually go out to bid until October, but knowing that we were going to possibly face some supply chain issues, we decided to bump things up this year. Like Travis mentioned, we are seeing long lead times on certain items and normal lead times on others. We also expected some pricing increases due to the inflation and as well as the lack of available raw materials at this time. Some of the pricing, like in the wire, actually came in at or below standards, and some of the transformers came in twice the price that we were expecting. So generally, we end up awarding everything we go out for. This year, we had to go more on a needs basis when selecting which materials to suggest for award. Over the past few years, we've been fortunate enough to stock up on inventory for some of these items. So the ones that are still on the list and not struck out are the ones that we have deemed necessity for next year's construction season. We're also trying to work on adjusting our strategy for next year, knowing that we aren't going to have quite the number of transformers coming in, as well as dealing with the long lead times. The transformers we usually expect to arrive in the springtime might not be arriving until about this time next year. So it'll be more of a restocking tile strategy rather than order ahead of time and use it up in the construction season next year. With that, I ask the commission to hopefully approve the awarding of the bids, and then we'll send it to City Council next week for final approval. Are there any questions?
I guess I want to say thank you for, and this has been a theme that I've heard coming up through the ranks, and that there's at least an acknowledgement that, yes, we really have to step up our timetable because of these supply chain issues. I think we heard about it from water before. Now we're hearing about it from electric. So I think that's really shows good forethought, and the acceptance of the inevitability of perhaps changing the timetable on our projects is, is also, it's good to hear in advance that this could happen rather than get to the end of the road and say, oops. So thank you for that.
Couple other items. Again, like Taylor talked about, we are looking at utilizing our inventories, and we've taken that direction for many years of making sure we have stuff on hand to handle any type of situation. And I think that is going to benefit us in 2022 because we'll be able to utilize that stuff and not have to be worried about it either not showing up or just the pricing is too high and it's not worth it to purchase it at this time. We'll have to, again, replenish those inventories at a later date, so we could see some higher than normal bids in a future, but we'll have to continue to watch that situation and move forward with that as well too. Again, bid results, if you were to award the full bid based on what the original specifications included, it'd be about $1.267 or $1.69 million. We're adjusting that down to about $877,000 on a needs basis. So again, we request your approval for the bid tabulation as noted with the stricken items.
Appreciate it. Any questions? Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to award bids.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by McDougall, seconded by Paulson, to award bids for the 2022 electrical materials. Any discussion? Seeing none, McDougall,
Aye.
Paulson,
Aye.
Thompson, aye. So thank you for putting those bids together. Appreciate it. Item number 13, approve change order number 1 with KLM Engineering for the I-94 Water Tower Rehabilitation Project.
I'm going to have Mark Pritchard come up and talk to this. It's a $4,297 item, but it's a good piece for Mark to bring up. So Mark, I'll let you go ahead.
All right, thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. This is a fairly low dollar amount change order. The reason for it being brought forward this evening for your potential approval is that we do not typically have master agreements for task orders that are one-off, such as a tower rehabilitation. So that's the reason why we brought it forward for approval this evening. There's two main items in this change order that are listed in the cost breakdown. The first item is a 4-inch blind flange so that we can attach a more up-to-date level radar detector system that we use to monitor how much water is in the bowl. And the second has to do with the artistic wrap for the design of the artwork that had been previously finalized here in the months prior to the project. So after we began the finalization of the final stencil, it was noticed that the orientation of the stencil wasn't quite what we were looking for after we saw what it would look like on a 3D rendering of the tower. And after some discussion with the contractor and city staff and members of the art committee, it was determined to go to a modified 360-degree wrap that had, instead of 2 stencils that had the text of the word Moorhead, it goes from 2 to 3. So that way, instead of having it pointing due east and due west, there's going to be one on the southeast portion, the southwest portion, and then more or less facing north. So it gives you 3 options to read the words Moorhead instead of 2. This also provided for the opportunity for lowering of the stencil cost itself. Had we canted the text to the south on each side with the existing stencil, we would have had 2 unique pieces that wouldn't have been reproducible as you put it around the tower. This modification allows us to use a smaller overall stencil for a cost savings and still take care of what we were looking for. So again, it's a relatively small item. Moorhead Public Service would be responsible for the 4-inch blind flange, and the city would be covering the additional cost, the $3,200 cost added for the artwork. And that is due to the I-94 artwork agreement that we had signed, I think it was 2019 when we had that taken care of. So in the artwork agreement that we have with the city, anything above $28,500 that we had built into this task order would be responsible for payment by the city, and this would make their contribution go up approximately $3,200. This has been communicated to the city prior to any decisions being made. We did get the discussion and the preference of the city staff to go forward with this, so then we sent over the approval for the contractors contingent upon tonight, and we're recommending approval of both of the items.
Mark, any questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
And this is maybe a board question, and General Manager Schmidt might know, but I think this is a no-brainer, obviously. But I'm just wondering, is there a threshold that we have in place for the general manager to just make decisions related to some of these minor items like this so they don't come to the board? I'm just curious, I guess, being a new commission member kind of here, so.
So good question. Typically, when we have task order agreements or some type of contract, we have language within the construction agreements to allow for a 5% range where the general manager can sign off on those change orders. Unfortunately, with the way this one is structured, we don't have that opportunity currently. So a good example is the lime sludge dewatering facility. I think Mark just had I don't remember what it was. It was about, how much dollars was that last change order?
Change order 2 is approximately $55,000. So that represented approximately 0.8% of the total project cost for that particular project. And we did have within the contract language the opportunity for the general manager to sign for up to 5% of project cost in change orders. With this I-94 tower project, we did things a little bit differently. We did a design build with the contractor and their sub, and that structure made it a little bit different, and we didn't actually have the language in place because typically it's not provided in a design build situation. So that's the reason why it wasn't in this one originally.
Another point to that too is I don't think we have a policy that allows that to happen, but we can take a look at that and I can get back to you with some information.
That'd be great, Travis, if you could. I mean, I guess I would be inclined to propose to the commission that we get something in place for the general manager, whether it's 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, where you have the discretion to make those decisions, even for MSA task order type agreements, just for efficiency. So, yep, thank you.
We can work on that.
You know, I guess with that, I'll make the motion to approve the flange and the artwork change order.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougall to approve the change order for the I-94 Water Tower Rehabilitation Project. Any further discussion? Seeing none, McDougall,
Aye.
Paulson,
Aye.
Thompson, aye. Okay, and item number 14. Oh, thank you, Mark, by the way. Approve agreement with the Salvation Army for a heat share program.
Sure, we've talked about this several times in the past about other donation programs that are available out there. And this year, we've done this in the past, but this year it's actually asked to take it to the board for approval. I'm going to have Mark Moylan come up and speak to this.
Thank you, Travis. Commission, Mark Moylan, Controller. We're bringing forward to you this year the annual agreement that we enter into between the Salvation Army and Moorhead Public Service to participate in their heat share program. The coverage period is from October 1 through September 20. And what this does is it allows Moorhead Public Service to advertise the program, point customers towards the Salvation Army's website, and allows the customers to make donations on their own, or if they provide them to Moorhead Public Service, that we will in turn provide them to the Salvation Army to distribute to qualified applicants. This is a supplemental program, and as part of the requirement, it also requires that the applicants have also exhausted their LIHEAP or low-income energy assistance availability through West Central Minnesota Communities Action. So this is, again, a much lower tier. The potential dollar impact is significantly south of $20,000, but it is an agreement that we like to have entered into every year to allow us to participate in the program.
Quick question for you. Is there any cost for the bill stuffer or bill insert that we have?
At this time, we have not done a formal bill stuffer. They do offer them at would be a cost of about $2,200. In exchange, what we do is we do advertise on the Moorhead Public Service mpsutility.com website and provide a link to the site. And then in addition, we do 2, sometimes 3 statement bill messages on the face of the bill, encouraging customers to look at the program and also include the website on the bill, face of the bills. Usually occurs early in the heating season, so October, November, and then again in January, early February at a minimum. Sometimes we'll get 3 in there if we do have not as many messages as are necessary in other months.
Is there, I noticed that on page 2 of the agreement, there's a reference to Mr. Schwant.
That is correct. It was based on prior contracts, so they didn't update that.
All right.
We did attempt to get a revised version, but rather than modify the version we were provided by them, we accepted it as it is, but we will strike out and put in the proper names.
Okay. Any further questions? Comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Paulson.
I'll just make the comment that I think this is another great opportunity to add another tool in your toolbox and provide another resource for folks to meet their needs. So I'll make a motion, I suppose, to approve the agreement with Salvation Army.
Second.
I have a motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougall, to approve the agreement with the Salvation Army for the heat share program. Any further discussion? Seeing no, McDougall,
Aye.
Paulson,
Aye.
Thompson, aye. Item number 15, closed meeting for executive session. We're not going into executive session today. So item 16, there's high probability of an October 5th meeting?
We'll be having both meetings in October.
Okay, great. Item number 17, adjournment. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
We have a motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougal to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for coming. Have a good evening.